This week, a discussion of DC's Flintstones series with John Roberson and Flintstones artist Steve Pugh. Steve talks a lot about the artistic challenges of the Flintstones, why he does all his drawing in ink, and more. This discussion was recorded before Flintstones number 12 came out, but John and I have recorded a separate review of issue 12 that's available for patrons only at patreon.com. More on that later in the show. This is Tim.
This is John.
And this is Steve.
And this is Deconstructing Comics. Welcome to Deconstructing Comics. This is Tim in Tokyo. This time we got a couple people on Skype here. John Roberson in the San Francisco Bay Area. Welcome back, John.
Hello.
And in Worcester in the UK, Steve Pugh, artist currently on the Flintstones comic. How are you doing, Steve?
I'm doing okay. Thanks for having me.
Sure.
I just finished the Flintstones, actually. It's about a week in my rearview mirror, so I'm gradually coming back to reality.
Yeah. Okay. So that's issue 12, which, as we're recording this, the issue 11 is the most recently released. 12 is coming out pretty soon, I guess, and that's the end, right?
Yeah, unless there's talk of doing more. We wrapped up by choice, which is always nice on a project.
Sure.
And
so they wanted you to do more?
Yeah. Dan DiDio was especially supportive of the project. Everybody was very, very. It was a very lovely experience. It wasn't at all what I expected from a Hanna-Barbera comic.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the kind of the first question here is, DC's been doing these various Hanna-Barbera property comics done in a much different take than usual. Yeah. Most of them are from the 60s, pretty much. I guess the big question is why?
Oh. Am I supposed to know that? Because I have no idea.
Okay.
Because, I'm the pencil pusher. Although I did pitch to write Jetsons at one point, which was why I was talking to Marie when they needed an artist on the Flintstones.
Are they not doing a Jetsons? I think I saw a preview for that somewhere.
Yeah, well, originally it was on the table with the launch titles, but then it got taken off the table because of somebody was going to do something with the property, and then it came back on the table, and now Jimmy and Amanda have got it. I don't know who the artist is.
I remember they were fairly good, at least as far as a lot of that stuff has been going. I have to say I'm not that fond of the other titles. I've had a look at them, and I don't know. It just seems like everything's either post-apocalyptic or trying to be, and except for yours, which and yours. I mean, I was already inclined to look at it. Obviously, I'm biased already because I've loved your art for ages, so allow me to just gush and get that over with. It was going to happen, Tim. You knew that.
Anyway.
Right, sure. But anyway, and full disclosure, actually, Steve here blurbed my book Lulu, which was very kind of him. But it's just the whole take of it. I mean, I guess I'm already kind of inclined to like that kind of angle anyway. I'm a Kurtzman guy, so anything that goes into that kind of satire is going to catch my interest. But my God, I mean, I think the first thing that popped into my head about it was it's like, so the Flintstones influenced The Simpsons heavily. And it seems like what this is okay. Now the Simpsons happen in the meantime. It's almost like an answer back from the Flintstones toward the Simpsons in a way. It's like taking the ball and rolling and taking it further in some ways. It's because it definitely is that kind of take. It's much more biting than the original. I mean, the original had all the satire and the anachronisms and stuff, but it was light, at least compared to what we would generally think of today. Nowadays, we expect something a bit sharper and a bit more biting. And yours is not as biting as some things can be these days, like South Park or something, and I don't think it's meant to be. But it's certainly a lot more so than the original. I mean, certainly the whole thing with the animals.
Mm-hmm.
I love the whole subplot going on with the appliance animals.
Yeah, well, go ahead.
I was just going to say that runs the risk of being really sad, and yet somehow you keep managing to find this balance in there, where it's still a bit funny, if a bit dark, and I find that amazing.
Yeah. The appliance animals were the breakout characters, and they were probably the thing I put the most work into, because they kind of vary in the style, their levels of cartooniness depending on what they're doing and who's seeing them. They're more realistic when the people are observing them, and they're more cartoony when they're each other, or when they're seeing each other, so to speak. And,
I was interested in how Dino looks more like 60s Dino, where the other animals look a little more realistic. The moose and the armadillo and whatever. Is that just because he's Dino, or?
Well, there's a certain kind of brand recognition with the characters, and I think Mark would very much have gone much further differentiating this Flintstones from the original. He didn't want to do the what he called the moo-moos, the kind of the togas, the fur togas.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't want to do the fur togas. He wanted more basically like real clothes, made out of animal skins and crudely stitched, and very much more sort of a big, a much bigger visual update. I didn't, but I wasn't in a position to, he's the writer, and this, you have to respect the chain of command. But luckily, there'd been a pre-visualization done by another artist, Amanda Connor, in fact, that got the project approved, and she'd done fairly straight rendition of the Flintstones, and that what had gone past Hanna-Barbera, and they'd approved that.
Right. Yeah, so, I've got that right in front of me here on their DC website.
Yeah,
I love yours.
So, it's got a little. I think it's got the baby pebbles.
Yes. Yeah. Baby Pebbles, Baby Bam Bam, but Dino looks less like '60s Dino than yours does.
Yeah. I just wanted to. I figured the theory behind it, the design language, was that Mark was going to take these characters to some pretty odd places, and I figured the best way to do this was to have something familiar, something that would provide an anchor for the reader, because it would be very easy to pick up these comics and lose the reader immediately. Mm-hmm. I know it's more exciting to redesign everything. I know it's more edgy to, as you were saying, the post-apocalyptic thing and the gritty thing. But if you can give the reader a rope or a guide rail or something so they can find their way into the new stuff, into, this. I mean, it's a big culture shock going, even the first issue's got some, like, very, dark play, finding out that Fred was a
war veteran. Yeah.
Yeah. seeing
not just a war
veteran,
but when he knows he participated in a genocide. As a matter of fact, he says so.
Right. Yeah, we don't get the full story till a later issue, but yeah, it's laid out. It's mentioned in the first one.
Yeah. So I felt it was important to and also because of the introduction of Dino. Dino comes in the second issue, and he's a payoff. He's a payoff to the story.
Right.
He appears on the last page. He's the payoff. You get one frame of him, and for you to get the payoff, you have to know immediately who this character is. So, art is a language, and if you get too flowery, it's a wonderful thing. You can go places with it, but if you use language that's overly complex, you lose what you're trying to tell people. So my design philosophy was to make the key characters very recognizable, very relatable, and then put all the fun and extrapolate on from those into the peripheral characters, and take people places. Start with the familiar and then take them into the odd.
Yeah, well, I think you came down in a good place where they're recognizable from the 60s characters, but at the same time more realistic looking. I think you kind of got the balance right.
I tried. I mean, the basic idea was, taking the idea that who were these cartoonists doing caricatures of? Trying to work backwards. Who were the people? If they were, who was the cartoon of? That kind of.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course, the Flintstones were based on the Honeymooners.
Yeah.
It was actually a little bit more than that. I was doing a little research earlier, and I'm sure you probably came across this yourself already, Steve. That the voice actor who did Fred was actually part of the visual basis for Fred. They were meant to resemble each other.
No, I did not know that.
Yep. Which was, I actually assumed that you probably had, because when I looked, I could see bits of that in your version of Fred, but maybe I was just seeing a pattern that wasn't there. I don't know, but in any case, yeah, that was the case.
Mark didn't want him to be. He didn't want to fall into that sitcom thing about having the big heavy guy with a beautiful wife. He wanted a very specific body type for Fred. He wanted a jock who had gone off the sea, like a jock who'd gone off the boil a bit. He was an ex-vet, and he worked in a construction site, so he was, he's a big guy, physically imposing. But sorry, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just wondering. When I was reading it, Barney. That was the only thing I found puzzling. Was Barney is not particularly shorter than he is.
Yeah.
Which is not important. Not important. I just wondered why.
Well, I was trying to kind of stratify the. It's an interesting. I think that just happened. Although there was a certain stratification of the kind of characters in Bedrock. There were so many characters, and because of the way what Mark wrote, I never knew if a character was going to be in one panel or if they were going to have a whole book to themselves, in a couple of months. So there was a lot of design work went into the main characters and the peripheral characters. So there was, I tried to have these body types where we had like the core guys who had who kind of happened before civilization hit, and they were big. They were, the Fred types and the Barney types, and then there were the ones who had grown up and had never known anything but Bedrock, and they were more kind of skinnier, I guess, but they were less built than the construction guys, and the Neanderthals, and there was a whole little bunch of groups of characters, and it just made designing them easier because I kind of knew which tribe they belonged to.
That's interesting. The Skinner thing. So, like, you're talking about guys like the would-be religious leader dude, whose name escapes me for the moment.
Yeah.
He's pretty skinny, for instance.
Yeah, and they also gave them different acting like libraries, if you want. Fred moved very differently to the priest because the priest had longer arms, skinnier fingers, so he could be more. He could gesture more because a lot of what he said was explaining his worldview and trying to bring people in. Same with him and the scientist were kind of brother characters. They had very similar body language.
I love the scientist character. I absolutely love the scientist character. You have some awesome expressions on him, especially I'm thinking particularly of the page where he offers Pebbles and Bam Bam the job of intern.
I really enjoyed him.
That's a great page. The whole subplot is awesome, but that page is great. So's the launch. The launch is amazing.
And he's totally Carl Sagan, right?
Yeah, for the most part, but he's also, he's
sort of
that 70s guy. He's the 70s guy with the receding hairline and the long hair and he's a bit Steve Jobs. There's a lot of Carl Sagan went into him. There's a few other guys I remember from UK TV from around that time. I remember somebody was a little offended that we're treating Carl Sagan with maybe not the respect he deserves, but it's not Carl Sagan. This is the thing. This is the guy. This is the first scientist. This is what will eventually become Carl Sagan. This is the very first guy figuring out that. What could, how does the planet revolve around the sun? Does the sun revolve around the turtle? Which is,
and it does, begin the absolutely vital scientific tradition of murdering chimps. So,
poor Colonel Sergeant. So don't wait for me to look it up. I'm just trying to remember what the chip was called. I can't remember.
Now it's going to drive me crazy. I have to look it up. Sergeant Grumble.
There we go.
He just looks thrilled. Can I tell you? He just looks thrilled to be alive.
God, this book was so much work. This is probably the hardest because most of the time you're not fitting dialogue. You're not fitting faces to dialogue. Your characters are happy, they're sad, they've got gur face. That's pretty much all you have to do. But this one was body language, every panel. It was like, I don't know, it was like drawing something out of Mad Magazine. It was like I was looking at Severin.
It's actually very much that. I think I've already remarked once or twice about this that
Kurtzman.
It seems like. Well, it seems like your inner Will Elder came out here, which is really awesome. I like seeing this. It's like all the little eye pops you've got spread out all over the place, the little names of places, just all the little details. It looks like a lot of work, but it's also, I think it's very effective. I don't know. It's like, the thing is, one thing I like about what you've done here. And I was seeing inklings of this back when you were doing Animal Man, actually, and also just in a lot of your recent work. But you seem to have found this nice sweet spot between realism and cartooniness, where you actually make the realistic characters expressive enough that they manage to have that kind of, oh God, what the hell is it that animators call it? Or stuff. I don't know what it's called. They have a term for it, but the point is they flow, they move in a way that, you have an awful lot of artists these days who are, quote, realistic, unquote, but 9 times out of 10, what you end up basically with is an awful lot of very stiff photo reference kind of crap and stuff like that. Whereas this is realism used the proper way, expressively, and I like it. It's perfect comics. As far as I'm concerned, I've only read up to issue 9.
There's more gushing.
No, but this is.
I'll certainly agree with a lot of those points.
Sure, why not?
I think Flintstones was a big. I think I succeeded in what I wanted to do on the Flintstones. I think on some of the superhero stuff I've done, maybe not Animal Man, because I felt a lot more confident in that, and because everybody's eyes were still on Travel Foreman. I wasn't going to win people over anyway, so I could kind of do my own thing. I do have a tendency with the more straight superhero stuff to get a bit stiffer. I have realised that, and what I'm hoping is that the stuff I've learned on the Flintstones I can bring to the table with more mainstream work. We'll see if I succeed. But I mean, a lot of it they won't. I mean, I'm not even something as simple as using solid black eyes, which makes a huge difference on a book like the Flintstones, because it gives everybody these really soulful faces. You can see the emotion. Just something about solid black eyes really pulls you in. But a lot of heroes and things have blue eyes, and you're off model if you don't use their look, and this is. I don't even know if you'd be interested in this, but the when you draw,
I'm actually very interested in this, but
well, when you draw a face, of course you are, John. Yes,
and the listeners are too. So,
well, I'm sure it'll make a nice change from writers explaining the meaning of life. I'm explaining the intricacies of eyes. When you draw a face, obviously everybody looks at the eyes, but when you draw them, a lot of the time you're drawing them quite pale, because you're drawing just the outline of them, and then you put in the eyelashes for kind of weight. When it goes to the colorist fills it with a blue or a brown or whatever, and that immediately changes the weight of the eye completely. And if you balance the face to that pale eye, completely changes the weight and the emotion and the expression, especially the expression. So, but going straight in with a black eye, it's bulletproof. You can't. Not Chris was amazing on the colours, but the point is he couldn't have. If he'd have been another colorist who wasn't sympathetic, then it would have been a lot harder to break the black eye. It's 5 o'clock in the morning.
I see.
I've got a certain amount of caffeine and adrenaline to be fueling me at this point.
So I wanted to go back to those Amanda Conner character designs. So, why does that exist? And did you kind of build on that, or did you feel you went a different direction, or how is yours different from that?
Marie and I were kicking around ideas on the Jetsons, and I'd been doing character sketches and things just to just for fun, really. And she sent me the Amanda Conner Flintstones, and she said, what's your take on this? How would you do this? And I sent back. I had a bit of time, and I fancied doing it, and I hadn't done any tone work for a while. I worked up how I'd see the characters, and the next thing I heard, I was on the book. I mean, I literally I wasn't asked. I wasn't.
Huh. Just suddenly they were soliciting it. Like, huh? Oh, I guess I got a job.
Yeah. Wait a second. Hold on. Okay. So if you weren't told, how did you? I mean, how did you just? In other words, you first found out simply when it was solicited, then after the fact they sent.
No. I wasn't. I didn't find out from solicitations. I was just informed that I got the job, but I wasn't after the job. But okay. I think it's like part of what makes Maria a brilliant editor, that I don't think I would have put myself forward as artist on the Flintstones. You know, I think I was as skeptical as everybody else about the book. You know, I you know, there was no master plan. I didn't see through the. I mean, there wasn't any script at that point, so I couldn't read the script and go, this is gold.
Mm.
There was just the idea that they were going to do a Flintstones comic.
And you were like, really?
Well, I was like, well, yeah, of course they own the characters. They want to keep them.
Yeah, but they're going to do this kind of Flintstones book.
Well,
I didn't know what kind of book they were going to do. It wasn't until Mark's script came through that. It was the first draft. It got changed quite a bit, which was why there was a bit of confusion. The design work for Pebbles, with the big ponytail that kind of swept over her eyes. In the initial stages, it was a more emo take on the character. She was more of a surly teenager, so I used the hair as a kind of way for her to kind of, glower out from under it. But when the final scripts came through, she was a much more she was like the sane voice. She was an interested party. She was the explorer, the concept explorer character. So that wasn't needed. So a lot of the characters did kind of evolve on the page, and change. And Mark, I think I don't know, but was working very much on instinct. And if something worked on the page, he'd bring it back. But there was no big plan. I think it just kind of grew. He just raised a child with the Flintstones and let it be itself.
Have you gotten to meet Mark Russell in person?
No.
No?
I don't meet many people in person, to be honest. I spend a lot of time in my Steve cave drawing comics. No.
Okay.
No, he's I've talked to him.
On
He's
Skype
a
or
lovely
something.
chap. Yeah, and mainly during interviews.
Yeah, I read one of those today. So in the comic, like, there are a lot of places where there are, like, parody names of, like the Tar Pit for Target and the Falcon Crest toothpaste. And does Mark come up with all those, or are you coming up with some of them?
I think for the again, I don't know this is certain, but I got the impression that for the initial double page splash where we established everything in Bedrock, which was a bit ambitious, considering that we didn't really know what we were going to do with the Bedrock. I got the impression that pretty much everybody contributed and waded in with ideas. Mark obviously came up with the big hitters. Can
I just point out two of them, and this is on the very first, almost the very first page. Whammoth, Bammoth, Thank You, Mammoth, and Homo erectus.
Oh yeah,
which is apparently a cocktail bar.
Yeah, well, that had to be made clearer because yeah, originally I just that was just on the side. It was written on the side of a giant bone, but that was felt to be a bit too on the nose. So it was changed to
cocktail bar works fine. It means that they have a good social scene. We do see Adam and Steve later.
Yeah,
and Adam and Steve.
It's always a cocktail bar. It was just I don't know. When you're drawing, you never oh, that's a good idea, and you don't kind of look at it through. I've got this blog post about how I ended up doing this Hellblazer pin-up of a bulldog's bumhole. Just this pin-up. Everybody was convinced I'd done it deliberately, but But if you work back through the design process, there was a story I'd done on Hellblazer with this giant bulldog, and they wanted a pin above it, and it was in a scrapyard. So I thought it'd be cool if Constantine was there with this iron bar ready to whack the dog, and the dog was coming over the reader like the Star Cruiser at the beginning of Star Wars. So like his legs were slamming down. But what it ended up being is the top left of the page is a giant illustrated dog bum, and I just ended up in that situation. And when you're drawing away and you're noodling away and you're doing all the trash on the garbage, and then you work up the legs and you're doing the hair and fur, it's just another part of the drawing. And then somebody sees it with fresh eyes and thinks you're trying to pull a fast one. And God bless her, Karen Berger.
This is the Dick Foreman issue you're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah, that was the original one, and then they wanted a pin-up of that for, I don't know, Constantine Casebook or something. I forget what it was. Or
I see. Okay.
Pin-up magazine. So I think it was for Stuart Moore, and like he gets it in the post, and he does the long walk down the corridor into Karen's office, puts it on the table, and Karen looks at it, and she goes, "Yeah, okay, but don't colour it red or anything."
Oh my God, you almost killed me with that.
And to this day, Stuart Moore thinks I was trying to get him fired. So when I drew the bone and wrote Homo erectus, it was because I was trying to find places, because the bones were a part of the Flintstone design language, but they were the bit I disliked most, because using bones in construction just felt wrong, like they'd smell, and I don't know. You spend a lot of time with the artwork, you start to kind of think at 4 o'clock in the morning, how would this work? I got into a similar situation with Gary Leach. He's got the same kind of obsessive thing. I was doing a character called Sharkman, and I designed the costume, and he was absolutely insistent that he shouldn't have boots, he should have flippers. And I'm going, Gary, he will look ridiculous if he has flippers. I know he should have flippers, he goes in the ocean, but he has jet boots. No, it wasn't even his character, but he did like 5 pages of designs showing how the flippers unfolded out of the boots and articulated and worked, and he loves all this stuff. And I said, Gary, no, he has boots.
Wait, were these supposed to be flippers that he would walk on in some way? Or,
yeah.
Oh, heavens. Yeah, that might have been awkward. I mean, that might as well be feet at that point, I would imagine. But
yeah. Hey. And it was, So there's another digression, sorry.
Actually, a very interesting digression. So the other thing that's interesting about it is that you guys really just go to town on pushing the anachronisms, which is a feature of the Flintstones anyway. Is the constant use of jokey anachronisms. But I mean, at some points, I love that it actually becomes intensely absurd at some points, and I mean that in a good way. Like, for instance, Werner Herzog, I believe is what he's called in this. Okay, he creates. He's the first filmmaker, which we hear about on television.
Yes. Look, I've already, I've told you about like the obsessive side of artists where they have to know how things work. Mark was throwing these things at me, and I was trying to. There's part of you that wants to be as brilliant as the original cartoon series that had the little bird in the Polaroid camera, elegant solution. And I'm sitting there with this page thinking, is a flat screen TV going to work? I should be drawing it. I should be just getting on with work, remembering how thumbs go. But no, I'm trying. how does a flat screen TV work? In the end, I just had to do it. And funnily enough, Chris, colour it in black and white, made it work.
Yeah, it hadn't occurred to me. There's no like animal in there doing anything. It's just kind of there.
No, there's not.
Yeah.
That was actually apparently a device, an actual device. That was one thing I wondered about, actually, is how the hell that thing was even working. I mean, it's not a big thing. It just kind of questioned that my mind thought, well, oh my God, I just came across Power Goat. I never stopped laughing.
Oh,
at Power
Goat was great. But, yeah, I don't remember. I mean, I think
that was so annoying. Originally, Power Goat just said Power Goat. And then he Mark was like really, really worried. He wanted to do a great job, so he kept revising. And then he got too fancy and he spoiled the gag. Power Goat should never say anything but Power Goat.
Doesn't he? I thought that was the case with him.
Yeah, I think he says Power Goat for schnizzles or something right at the end.
Oh, he does. That's right. I remember that. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
And I didn't find out till I got the comic. He'd done the script. I was like, Mark, no, trust your feelings. Turn off your battle computer.
I'm trying to remember in the TV series, how did they have TV? I'm sure they had TV, but was there some explanation for how it worked?
I think they did, yeah.
Yeah, I think by that point they got Gazoo and they just threw out all.
Well, you guys actually made Gazoo make sense. I mean, Game Warden.
Yeah.
I love that they haven't got the slightest idea what that means.
Yeah, I know. The idea of preserving anything. Instead of using any of the animals as just raw material, would just pass over their heads.
I love the Alien Bros issue. It's like,
the spring break.
Bones for you. Yes, that. Every bit of it is obnoxious. It's a real thing.
Coming up, the animal appliances storyline and putting human facial expressions on animal characters. Is there a Trump analog in Russell's Flintstones? Why Steve doesn't pencil and goes straight to inks, and why the seagulls like it that way, and more. If you're supporting this podcast via patreon.com, you can hear John and me reviewing Flintstones issue 12. Does that issue reconcile the contradictions between science and religion? What message are we to take from the animal appliances? It's almost 30 minutes of audio, available if you pledge any amount on a monthly basis at patreon.com/deconcomics. When you watched Batman as a kid, you enjoyed the colorful heroes and villains, the text sound effects on the screen, the thrill of watching a heroic crime fighter escaping from death traps and taking down bad guys. But the show was devised to interest adults, too. What did you miss as a kid? Sexual innuendo.
The penguin's too small for me.
Closeted gay characters.
I like that cape, Batman.
Freudian death traps.
Has the giant clam really swallowed Robin?
Police incompetence.
Bruce Wayne is a millionaire playboy. Hardly a secret identity for Batman.
Whether you're a kid or an adult, there's something to like about our favorite Caped Crusader. Tim and Paul dig for the deeper meanings under the Batmania every first, third, and fifth Thursday of the month. What's the podcast's name?
To the Batpoles. To the Batpoles. To the Batpoles.
But no, the thing is, it's like, is there? I mean, I haven't gotten past issue 9 yet because unfortunately I've been busy. But do we get to a point where there's actually some kind of animal revolution? Because it certainly seems like they're building to that at certain times. I don't know.
Well, I don't want to give it away. Issue right?
Yeah, 10. Okay. I read up to 11 just today, and yeah, 10 is it's not an animal revolution. No, it goes in a different direction.
Okay. It just seems logical, given where they're going and just how incredibly disgruntled they really are. The can opener tries to stay out of sight, but that's another story. I don't know. I mean, I love that the whole bit. I've said this before. The whole bit with the vacuum cleaner and the bowling ball and their friendship, and also, by the way, how the bowling ball perceives his existence. That is, wow. He believes his life is nothing but constant abuse, basically. He thinks that Fred is always mad at him for
no reason.
For no reason. He has no idea. Well, maybe it might be a reason, but he has no idea why. In any case. Like, I can't take it. And yet he comes back to do the same job anyway. But then again, he would have been eaten or something, wouldn't he? He would have been
right, turned into cat food or something.
Right. Well, I think that also justifies Dino being different because A, they perceive him as different. I mean, the other animals don't trust him or like him.
Well, he doesn't have a purpose.
Right. Exactly. That's the thing. He's the one
fed
who's
for free.
Pet. He is just a pet, and the fact that he looks the way he does, that makes actually a certain amount of sense. I actually like the fact that he looks like regular Dino. I think that's one thing that probably should remain. Besides, like I said, you have a thing here, it seems to me, where with rules that are actually part of the point with the rules of the Flintstones is twisting them. I mean, the creative anachronism thing being one thing. It seems like the joke is how far can you push the anachronism at some point. I don't know if you perceive it as that way, but it seems like that would be part of, making it. And that seems like a lot of fun.
One of the design. Well, there was just a brief mention in the issue where Fred starts selling the vitamin pills. That there's a character called Tim, and he's got a computer on his desk, and that's all the script says. So, okay. So I designed this little. I just had a computer frame, and I put an abacus in it. And I thought, that's clever. And I thought, I've been really clever. And then a couple of issues on, Mark's got the scientist with a applecus. And it's an iMac with a. I thought, I've been wondering.
Girls used to ignore me, but not with this computing power.
Yeah. So it was there's a lot of fun to be had with the design work in it, and but again it was a frustrating process because often, I mean, I think Mark wanted to give me a lot of room to maneuver, so he'd just basically tell me what he wanted, and then let me kind of make it happen. But it did kind of. There were a couple of occasions where I'm like, well, how would that work?
Yeah, well, like in issue 3, when the Fred and the other soldiers have returned from battle and they're in the parade and they're in this wooden convertible. I mean, you must have had to think about what that convertible was going to look like.
Probably like a.
They're in a car. They're in a car in a parade. And they're kind of sitting up on the back of it. It's a convertible with the top down. But it doesn't really look the same as like a 60s Flintstones car. It's got more kind of sides on it, and it's all wood.
Yeah, well, that was another problem that we had to tackle because Mark had introduced. I mean, there was always like bosses and workers in the Flintstones, but Mark had introduced like the 1%ers with Mr. Slate and his friends. They were rich, but everything in the Flintstones universe is made of crap. So how do you show that their stuff is better? With it can make some of it out of marble or something, but and basically it came down to intricacy of the design. So instead of having, the car with the logs for wheels, like the big convertible, which was like a mayor's car, it was a big parade car. It was just more intricately made from the same materials, and it was still bound together with vines. Still, kind of, that was the solution we went to. But yeah, it was a surprisingly complex book, design-wise. I don't think.
What's been the hardest thing to draw so far? Well, you finished it, but of the 12 issues, what's been the hardest thing to draw?
Well, I guess the thing that I won't miss drawing was funnily enough, Barney's fur. I could never get that right.
Huh.
I could never get it to hang right because it didn't drape. It was That's not a very interesting answer. Let me have a quick skim, see if there's anything that I. Well, Claude was overly designed. I probably should have made him a bit simpler.
Claude the Destroyer.
No, Claude should look that way, I think.
Yeah, he kind of should.
I mean, he's basically Trump, isn't he? I mean, Claude.
Well, I went back and forth on that. Was he supposed to be specifically Trump, or is he more just kind of a general take on fear mongering? I mean, although when Stoney Danza comes in, I felt like, oh, this is Scott Baio supporting Trump, but I wasn't sure.
There are elements in there, but the problem is if you make a character Trump, then they can only be Trump, and the characters need to service the story, not the other way around. Yeah. So, and that's why I was, there's a temptation when you do books like this to bring friends in or celebrities or as extra characters, because obviously you're doing big crowd scenes and things. And the problem is, once a character stops being the character in the story, you start worrying about, does it look like the person I've based this on? Then it's the dynamic is completely wrong. These characters have to service the story. So yeah, plainly, the shorthand is Claude is kind of Trump, but he's more sympathetic and he's strangely more complex. Although he does have that sort of origin of, like he's got this father who he can't really live up to, and
that was Mordock.
Yeah. But he had much bigger horns.
Mm-hmm.
They may sell you some of their pine art, or they may kill you. Who knows?
Yeah,
pine cone art is.
He had a proper skull for a mask, and Claude's only got like that wooden one. I think there's a certain amount of compensation going on with Claude.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole costume is like properties. Like he's got this big heavy cloak, so I've got these three rocks that hang from the front of the cloak to counterbalance that, because I always remembered that David Prowse always used to complain about the Darth Vader cloak in the first Star Wars movie, that the chain was always slipping up and choking him. So I gave Claude's cape a counterweight so that it would be fine on him. I can't believe I worry about stuff like this.
Well, was the character going to complain?
Yeah. Okay. Well, they all, when you've been working for like 36 hours and
they start talking to you.
Well, yeah, the peripheral vision spiders start heckling and telling you where you've gone wrong. So I like to keep them happy.
When I get to that point, what happens to me is I actually start seeing the capillaries in my eyes, and the thing is that my brain starts interpreting it as figures made of silly screens. That's the point where I usually think. That's the point where I usually think it's a good idea to pass out, because they look like Keith Haring, and I'm not fond of him. So
Yeah,
it really happens. I swear to God.
I noticed in issue 5, I don't know if it was in other places too, but there's that issue 5 has a big flashback section where during in the battle against the tree people, and you used a technique that I've usually seen in manga where the gutters are black during the flashback. Did you get that from manga, or why did you decide to use that?
Oh golly, no. Well, it was a visual. It was the easiest way to show that this was a change in the story timeline. The guttering technique on the Flintstones is actually based on Ben Caldwell's guttering system on Prez. I had a look at the line weights on his guttering system, and I swiped it in its entirety. But that meant that I was kind of like wandering around for ways to show flashbacks, because initially we were just doing individual panels, so I could just have kind of hand drawn, thicker, ragged panel borders, and that worked. But when it moved on to full pages, that wasn't going to look so great. So I just went with this thing of having, and the panel borders are uneven, so basically it's supposed to look like the panels are laid on a black background rather than
right, yeah,
than
sure.
The actual, yeah. No, God, I can't remember. Probably used this as far back as Grimjack. It's just part of a library, a visual library.
Part of the comics language. Somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually not that familiar with manga comics outside of Matsumo Shiro, because I'm a massive science fiction fan. So his design work just drew me right in. But generally, I don't read a lot of it because my interests are in character expressions and I find I'm not. I don't know. It's not to my taste.
Well, who are some of your favorite comics artists?
Oh gosh, it's all. I'll sound like an old guy. Sound like an old guy from the 70s, which is kind of what I am.
We're all old, Steve.
Well, funnily enough, a lot of them are Mad magazine artists like Mort Drucker and John Severin.
I can totally see that.
Huge fan of. I basically wanted to be Jamie Hernandez when I started out. That's basically what all the stuff I was kind of drawing for myself were these kind of love and rocket seed people. Jamie Hernandez.
Oh, Jamie Hernandez. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
My hearing's going on me. See, I told you, old. Hernandez. That's actually a little surprising. The other two, I could totally see. I could definitely see Drucker. What was it that you liked best about Jamie?
That I couldn't do it. It was the simple line. His control of line work is just so beautiful. He can say so much with just a few lines, and I can't. My art is much messier because I don't pencil. I go straight in inks.
I don't know how you do that.
Well, I do a lot of corrections. It's not. I don't get it right. I just correct it a lot.
Like back when you were doing work for Crisis and when you were doing stuff on Hellblazer. I mean, how were you working then?
With spirit-based whiteout. Warren Ellis. Warren Ellis famously said that I have seagulls nesting in my fight scenes because the boards are so thick with whiteout. They're covered in patches and sticky labels. And what it was when I was young, I'd gone to an art gallery and I'd seen some Ralph Steadman. And I saw a piece that I'd seen printed in a magazine, and a pen and ink illustration. And it looked, amazing, of course. But when I saw the original, it was covered in corrections and labels and stuck on bits and cut out bits. And it suddenly clicked. So long as it prints, it doesn't matter.
Well, that's true.
And that's basically... So I just don't have the patience to pencil. And because... every time I've tried to pencil, I've had to redraw it in ink anyway because the pencil doesn't recreate what the inks will look like. They don't have the same marks. They don't have the same, I don't understand how people can draw a page and just have X's for where the blacks are going to go. How can your brain see that my brain can't see what it's going to look like? I only know what it's going to look like when I've done it. That's my problem.
In my case, I'm just too insecure not to do all the penciling. I do like a massive amount of that before I even start to, well, not put ink on it now. But in what you said about whiteout, for me, that's blue pencil. If you look at an original of mine, I mean, you can barely tell where the pencil drawing is before I scan it because it's just so covered in the blue pencil that I start out with before I even see the graphite. So I'm exactly the opposite. But then again, my work is what it is, so that's where
You've
that's
got to be yourself. You have to be. You work with what you have. Everybody has different. Everybody has different abilities, and when I was working on paper, I was constantly trying to find the right combination of materials. Frankensteining pens, rollering house paint onto the DC boards. That worked really well. I used to get.
Paint onto the DC
matte
board?
emulsion house paint, roll it onto the boards. Gave an incredible tooth, and then I used a biro on it. And I draw. My lines are slow and deliberate, and I kind of figure out where the line's going to go as I'm drawing it. Obviously because so that really suited me, which is why I admire, taking it back, Amy Hernandez, because I can't make those sweeps, those strokes with a brush, because I can't make that leap. I can't. I don't know where. I guess in pencils, I don't know where what my hand needs to be. My hand is deciding what's going to happen next as it's making the line before. So yeah. Oh yeah, we're asking about artists I like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, all the Brit guys from the '60s, the Mike Nobles and the Ron Embletons, a lot of the European artists. I don't know. I have no idea how to pronounce his name, but the Rank Xerox guy, Liberatore, was a
Liberatore.
Yeah, when I saw his stuff, that blew my mind. So yeah, but not really many mainstream monthly comic guys. Although I appreciated what they did, they weren't what I was looking for. If you know what I mean. I was looking for something. Just something that spoke to me. I'm not knocking. Mainstream art. Mainstream art works really, really well at telling the story, and I just wasn't looking for those influences.
Mm-hmm. I ended up taking most of my notes about the writing, even though I knew I was going to be talking to the artist. But
you throw them at me, I might know the answer.
Well, it's just sort of like my impressions. Like, I felt like Mark Russell was kind of satirizing all of human civilization. I mean, he's like kind of touching on everything.
Yeah, he does, which is pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah, and he's kind of making it work too. I mean, it's like, everything from genocide to consumerism is kind of in there. I'm not
marriage.
Sure how marriage.
The whole marriage thing.
Yeah.
The idea that marriage is a perversion in this context, actually, which I think is fucking brilliant.
Right, yeah, get back to the sex cave.
When I read that made me howl. But I think what he found was the Flintstones gave him a canvas where he could have humanity kind of without all the pretensions, without all the veils, without all the sophistication that made these things. There's a lot of stuff we do that is just plain silly, but we've managed to do it so well now in such a sophisticated manner that it looks deliberate and clever and fine and normal. But in its naked state, when it's the first people doing it, it's exposed for all its ridiculousness. And I think that's what he found was the great way in to enjoying these characters. Because I'm not sure Mark was especially keen on working on the Flintstones as as a particular project. I think he found it offered real opportunities once he was writing it. I think we both kind of. I think I think we both should have just trusted Marie more.
And I should mention, by the way, as a cat owner, I absolutely love the opening of Domestications. Because, yes, that's precisely how it happened. I'm sure of it. I prefer you to starvation.
Yeah.
I have 3 ferals, so it's not actually even something from the past.
Right. But yeah, well, so you're talking about, Steve, about his civilization is just kind of getting started here, and the kind of sheen is not there, and I guess that kind of explains why I felt like there were a lot of cases of people just kind of baldly stating what they're doing, when talking about the Trump political candidate, where someone says he says the things I wish were true, nobody would actually say that, but he's kind of
these days I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. But there is that naivety, that sophistication is there. Mark was explaining about one of his favourite characters is Rock Stone, the news guy, who just says it out loud, and they're all finding their way. When they're doing their first news reports, and they show some guy's got squished by a rock, and after they cuts back to him, and he's like, "Oh yeah,
maybe we shouldn't have shown
that."
We're still just kind of figuring this out.
We shouldn't do that. Yeah.
Yeah, because TV's just come on the air, so they're kind of feeling their way around.
Yeah. Well, I guess comics were like that, weren't they? Before they got censored.
Sometimes it almost seems like they actually, like a caveman had somehow made its way to the present, saw all this stuff, and then went back and tried to imitate it as best as he could.
That kind of started all the conspiracy theories about the Flintstones being what the Jetsons are living over.
The poor people, yeah.
Yeah, that the Flintstones and the Jetsons are in the same universe.
They actually tried to touch on that back in Harvey Birdman. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but that was actually Hanna-Barbera's previous attempt to get a more adult audience for these properties. But that was more just straight up parody, really. But basically the idea was one of the Hanna-Barbera characters had become a lawyer for all the other Hanna-Barbera characters. The Flintstones actually did appear at some point. They did them as the Sopranos. And because they were basically touching on the fact that every single Flintstones episode was him trying to do some get-rich-quick scheme, and they realized, wait a second, Fred's a criminal, isn't he? So they basically went on that angle.
Poor Fred. Fred just trying to get by.
They actually had to be very careful. I was listening. The commentary on that episode is interesting, and it might be actually somehow congruent to what your experience may have been, because apparently they had to be very careful when dealing with the Flintstones in a way they didn't with any of the other characters. I mean, with the other characters, like, for instance, Yogi Berra, they turned Boo Boo into the Unabomber. Okay, they were able to do that. But in Fred's case, because of things like the vitamins and other things that were attached to him, they had to be really careful. So at the end, they had to find a way that he wasn't actually a mob boss. It turns out it was actually Barney.
As far as I know, management was completely hands off for Mark. They let him. He thought they'd have problems with the vitamins, the vitamin scam.
Yeah, I mean,
of all things.
That was a specific subject of one issue, as a matter of fact. And Mark, I've read an interview where he said, "Yes, absolutely, I hate those fucking vitamins," which I thought was hilarious.
Well, he had to explain to me what Fruity Pebbles were. I mean, I knew they, but I
oh yes.
Yeah, how visible are the Flintstones in the UK anyway?
Well, they're actually running a series of Halifax bank adverts at the minute that are using Hanna-Barbera characters. They led with the Flintstones,
Really?
He gets a loan and he gets a pair of sneakers so he can take the weight off his feet when he's running around in his car. He got Top Cat goes in for a mortgage and gets a new trash can. There's some others, but I can't remember what they.
So the Hanna-Barbera characters are actually just as well known there as they are here.
They're very known, but they're not generally on TV. If they turn up on a T-shirt, most people would know who they are, but they're not. I don't know if they're part of like kids' consciousness. I'm not sure if like under 30s, under 20s would know who they were.
Well, that's a thing about some of these properties that I guess, like the second wave of these that DC's putting out, people younger than me who don't remember the 70s or 60s, like some of these characters they just don't even know. Like, I guess Rough and Ready are supposed to be getting this treatment, and I remember them, but like the guys on iFanboy don't know them.
I'm an animation fan, and I don't really remember Rough and Ready. Somebody was telling me that I don't know if this is true, but they were talking about doing a Blue Falcon and Dynamite comic, and that really excited me. I'm like the only person in Britain who knows who they are.
I remember them, and it's
stronger than a train with a so-so brain.
They also they actually did show up in Harvey Birdman, and there was a whole thing about how he was basically a knockoff of Birdman. And they gave him for some reason they gave him a Spanish accent, and Birdman ended up accidentally killing Dynamite by putting him through a Xerox machine as revenge.
I'm not having that. I'm not having that. No, that is not canon. I'm not having that.
Well, he was macking on his territory. What could he do?
No.
Dynamite came back. He was fine, and Harvey spent 7 years in prison. And it turned out it was all a prank, but there was that.
I'm happy now.
But it's actually, though, there were some others. Like one of the other books, I believe, is Wacky Raceland, which basically they take it and just sort of turn it into Fury Road, essentially. And that was actually a cartoon I wasn't even familiar with as a cartoon. I just knew the character Peter Potamus because he was very heavy on Harvey Birdman, and I found out there was basically like just a bunch of things that would race around every week, apparently.
You would. Wacky Races was very big here. In my age group. But then, and I've said this in another interview. The 70s was a pretty grim place in Britain. And the American cartoons were a little ray of sunshine. So the Hanna-Barbera, the Flintstones, Yogi Bear, especially Wacky Races were big, must-see shows. So they're for my age group, it's a very big deal.
Wacky Races must have just preceded me when I was a kid, because I know that was like an early 70s thing, and I was born in '69, so I must have just missed it. Because I remember there was a lot of Hanna-Barbera stuff. I remember Laugh Olympics, especially, which was fine until it was destroyed by that steroid controversy. But what can you do?
What controversy?
It's a long story. It's all very sad, and it involves grape ape, but I won't go into the details.
Okay.
I'm just saying there's a reason you can never see his genitals.
I love the spin-off from Wacky Races, which was Dastardly and Muttley and their flying machines, which was this.
I remember
that was the one. If I'd have been given the choice, that was the one I would have drawn, because it would be perfect for some kind of diesel punk treatment, some kind of future World War One thing. Just as an artist, that would be amazing. But it's been done by Garth. Garth's got hold of it, and he's taken it a completely different way. So that's coming up.
Garth, as in
Garth Ennis? Yeah, sorry.
He's writing that? I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
oh, I should go back and have another look then, because that's interesting.
Garth Ennis is doing Dastardly and Muttley or Wacky Races?
Well, they're in that.
Dastardly and Muttley, which is
they are called that. They are in fact called that. I read that far enough to notice that much. It's just, I think it was just a post-apocalyptic thing that put me off. I don't know. I should go back and give it another chance.
Well, now the Dastardly and Muttley's not out yet, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the Wacky Races was Ken Pontiac.
Okay.
But I think they're doing a Penelope Pit Stop, and they're doing a Dastardly and Muttley
are in that,
but they're not sharing continuity with the Wacky Raceland comic.
Okay.
They're each their own thing.
Oh, well, that's good then. Because I nothing personal against the guys who did it. I just didn't like it very much. But that's cool. Oh my God, I'll be looking for that then.
I've seen the first issue of Garth's take on it, and it's not what I expected, but I really enjoyed it.
Is he going humorous with it? Because he does good humor.
Well, of course he's going humorous with it, but yeah.
Well, because the Wacky Raceland thing I saw was definitely not, and that was part of what I didn't like about it. So I was just wondering. No, that's good. I was just reading his 6-second dog welder, and that did not stop making me laugh.
Yeah, I've read Ken's scripts for Wacky Raceland, and it was probably I don't think they had a great artist, but I'm not sure he was an artist suited to humor, and the humor got played down, and he was really, really good at the machinery and the leather and the oomph of it. I think some of the humor in the script kind of went by the wayside, which was unfortunate. It's just the luck of the draw, really, how these things turn out.
And now Mark is working on Snagglepuss now, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. He's doing him as what? What was his
kind of a gay university professor or something?
Oh, did you say Tennessee Williams or something?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was it, yes. And isn't Augie Doggy in it as well? I think
that's Deputy... No, I think it's Huckleberry Hound.
Is that supposed to be Huckleberry Hound? It looked like Augie Doggy to me. I think he was in fact wearing a turtleneck or something.
I'm not sure.
Well, I defer to you. Maybe Huckleberry Hound's in it, but that wasn't him. Yeah, I saw the preview. That was beautiful. I don't know who's doing the book art, but
it's interesting because again, similar to a lot of the well, you don't really anthropomorphize the animals, but you certainly do humanize them quite a lot. And I see a lot of that there in the page that I was just referring to. And it's interesting because, like I said, it gets to this weird place where when you do that with animals, it really is incredibly difficult to get real, like, completely humanly readable expressions out of animal characters, I would imagine.
Oh God, yeah. You have to cheat massively. I didn't know how far Mark was going to take the animal appliances. So I mean, they were much more realistic. Sorry?
So once he knew he had you, I mean, we've all seen Animal Man, so we all know that you can't answer drawings. So. Right, I can tap into all the animals.
I don't know if he's read Animal Man. I think Mark's background isn't comics. He comes from books and satire. So it's I think Prez was his first comic work. But he illustrates. He has an understanding of illustration, so he knows how to communicate with an artist. So it's all applicable skills. But yeah, the animals started off. I mean, I originally thought they were going to be more realistic, but for the purposes of the story, they had to go more. They had to have more expression. They had to, I had to move. I had to have certain animals move their eyes around to the front so they could have eyebrows or parts of their faces that acted like eyebrows, so they could emote. But some of them were quite tricky. Funnily enough, because Dino was so close to the original, he was probably the hardest to get any kind of emotion out of. Because you can't go very far off model with Dino before it stops looking like Dino, or it starts looking like Dino drawn wrong. But going back to what you were saying about keeping his design close to the original, I think that in part was stubbornness on my part, because I'd seen so many kind of like everybody's got a take on what a adult version of the Flintstones would be like, much like everybody had a take on what an adult version of Scooby-Doo would be like, and everybody made Dino into a velociraptor or a really kind of badass dinosaur. No, Dino is a lame-ass dinosaur. He's not. Dino is the lamest dinosaur in the world. If he was out there, he wouldn't last a day. That's what's so great about he is. He's on his way to be recycled when Fred finds him.
And he's a Bronto. He didn't even exist. So there's that.
That's a vision. Imagine the shock.
But the thing is that whereas you say it's cheating, and the thing is though, it doesn't come off that way, and that's the best part. I mean, it's like it might be cheating, but it's still convincing because they still appear to be animals, and their expressions it still come off as theirs. The only place where I can really see the cheating, which I guess is necessary, would be with vacuum cleaner.
Funnily enough, the real cheating was bowling ball, because there's no way
his mouth and his little dot eyes, yeah.
Because he can't. I mean, there's the range of arm movement on bowling ball. If I actually stuck to the anatomy of an armadillo, would be. So I basically had to massively cheat with the armor, and sometimes have armholes for it, or sometimes have it, But so long as I basically took my time developing a style that could have slightly more realistic characters and cartoony characters in the same panel and not jar. They felt part of the same room. But that part of that was the luxury of doing because originally I was only supposed to be doing the first 3 issues. That's what I signed on for, and I had another project to go on to after that. And I used all the lead time on those 3 issues, because why wouldn't I? And then I found out I was regular, and then I found out I was the regular artist. So for the rest of the run, I was right up against the wire, drawing pages.
Well, and issue 7 was drawn by Rick Leonardi. I guess was that deadline issue or?
Yeah. And the idea was I'd get a jump on the rest of the book, but we used it on another color cover and some other stuff. So as soon as I came back, I was right up against the wire again, which gave a certain amount of adrenaline and to the artwork, which was good. It is good when you don't have too much time to fret and worry about things.
Well, yeah, I've heard other people in various arts, music, whatever, say they do their best work when they're under a deadline.
Yeah, but you can also do your worst work when you're under a deadline. It can go either way, and you can't go back and you can't and these days if you do a bad piece of work, it's on Twitter forever. Please remember that face you did, or that time where
or Rob Liefeld's Captain America, which will live forever.
Poor guy. It's funny time now. I just feel bad for Rob.
Actually, the thing about Rob Liefeld is I have no use for him as an artist per se, but as a conceptualist, he has this amazing ability to create characters that other people, what's cool about him is he's totally willing to let other people do this, and it's smart of him to do so. But other people, when they take on his stuff, They did some amazing stuff with it. Deadpool, Supreme, Glory, all those characters. He's let other people rip. Well, in Deadpool, he didn't have any choice. But
secret of success in life is to take credit and apportion blame. That's all you have to do. I learned that from Mr. Slate.
I mean, it's just weird because you wouldn't know where it could even go. I mean, there was something like Warren Ellis and Tula Lote's Supreme Blue Rose, and I swear to God, I would never thought you could make something like that out of Supreme. So, but then again, it's Warren and Tula, so they could probably do anything good with anything they touched. I guess one thing also that I wonder if you guys have a chance to are you going to be doing this again? I mean, are there plans to do this again?
Everybody wants to. Mm-hmm. DC wants it to happen. We want it to happen. So
certainly sells enough to justify.
I can't guarantee it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. I can't guarantee it's going to happen, but all parties are willing.
Okay.
And is there anywhere, I guess you may not even be able to talk about this, but I'll try anyway. Is there anywhere that you particularly want to see this go if it continues? Anything that's particularly interesting to explore?
Oh, I can't project that. Mark doesn't work like that. Mark's brain just tells Mark what's going to happen, and then the script arrives, and you did not see that coming, and I'm happy for Mark's brain really knows what it's doing with this book, and I made some suggestions, and when we were kind of bouncing around ideas for because there was a point where we were maybe talking about not having a fill-in issue but having a light art issue, and I was bouncing around some ideas that would have made an issue that was a little easier to draw, and really they were just so pedestrian compared to the stuff Mark was coming up with, and even when Mark does pedestrian, he does it in such an odd way that that means marriage. He did an issue on marriage, and it was insane.
It was genius, and I have to say too, my friend Dale Lazarov, who's on the show quite a lot, has been talking up in particular the whole Adam and Steve thing. That's good. That's been going over really well with his fans. So
they were one of my favourite moments is when they greet Fred, and I see little body language on it. One's like ruffling his hair, and the other one's like punching him in the arm. It's like I just wanted like the affection to come. These are people that have known him all his life, and there's a lot of characters in this book that I'm really pleased exist, and it's been really really rather brilliant to be part of it. And who would have thought, as so many people have said, it would be a Flintstones book.
Well, it's interesting you talking about how Mark works and comes up with stories kind of in a way that maybe even he doesn't expect. I mean, issue 10, since John hasn't read it, I don't want to spoil it, but
I nearly quit. I actually, when I got the script, I didn't find out about issue 10. If we're talking about the same thing, I didn't find out until I saw an alternate cover sketch.
Oh, I have it. Wait, I have read issue 10. Now it's 11 I haven't read.
Okay, yeah, with Vacuum Cleaner.
Yeah,
right. No, yeah.
I found out.
I think I only read half of it though. I think that was what it was.
But it's done in a way that's both like kind of funny and at the same time it's tragic. It's and I wasn't quite sure why he went that direction because you don't see it coming in the earlier issues.
I believe he decided on the page. I believe he decided as he was writing it. That's just the way the book took him. And it was I haven't really talked this through with Mark. I think he thought I was joking about it, but it was real, because you invest a lot in these characters. You invest a lot in just working out their body language, working out their look and you feel like they're you're the other parent. You feel,
Mm-hmm.
And then when you find out you have actually no control over their destinies,
Mm-hmm.
It's your option is to draw it or watch somebody else be paid to draw it. And there you go. So I got I had a word with myself. I realized I was being a little ridiculous. But if this book involved a lot of late nights, so I was probably not working with a full deck. But there was a moment when I had quit the book, and I was just sleeping on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That would have been a shock.
In retrospect, but
so
you just get so wrapped up in it.
Yeah. So Steve, what's coming next from you now that this is finished?
Oh, I started working on the next thing the next day. I don't know if I'm allowed to say really. Nothing that's been announced.
Okay.
But I'm working for DC, and it's at the minute I'm doing some like proper hardcore superhero. Which so it's complete. I haven't drawn a straight line in a year, so it's a real culture shock. I mean, literally haven't. I mean, apart from the panel borders, which I haven't drawn anything with a straight line in it. It's quite mind-boggling.
Get the dust off your rulers.
Yeah, having to work out perspective before I commit to drawing a table and not being able to fudge it by just knocking the corner off. Or something.
Okay. John, did you have anything else you wanted to ask or bring up or anything?
No, I think I'm cool. This has been fun.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, Steve, thanks very much for taking time away from the drawing table here.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. It was really nice to finally talk to you.
Yeah, you too, man. Thanks for showing an interest. It's always nice to talk to people.
To actually other human beings.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
That's why I like coming on the show.
Follow Steve on Twitter at StevePughCom, StevePughCom. We'd love to hear from you. Write us at mail@deconstructingcomics.com or look us up on Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. All our social media links can be found on the right sidebar at deconstructingcomics.com. Also, please give us a review on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher. Our theme is from bensound.com. Last Thursday on To the Bat Poles, Paul and I discussed Tallulah Bankhead as the Black Widow. Look up To the Bat Poles wherever you find your podcast or at tothebatpoles.libsyn.com. If you're looking for some constructive feedback on your comic, send it to us and Mulele and I will critique it on our spin-off podcast, Critiquing Comics. Send it to mail@deconstructingcomics.com. We'll read at least 30 pages of it and critique it on the show. The next episode is coming this Thursday, right here in this podcast feed. Next week, Coom interviews Vanessa Davis, creator of the comic Out of Time. Till then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Deconstructing Comics.